The meeting room was cold. Ambassador Daewon sat alone at the long table, waiting. He had been waiting for 3 hours now. His hands were folded on the table in front of him. He did not move. He knew what this meant. When the council made you wait this long, the answer was already decided. The doors finally opened. 47 alien representatives walked in. They did not look at Daewon. They took their seats in silence. Chancellor Vorthalis, the leader of the Veltharn species, stood at the front. His scales were bright blue and his eyes were like black glass. He looked down at Daewon with something close to disgust. "The vote has been taken," the Chancellor said. His voice was flat and cold. "Humanity is expelled from the Galactic Council. You have 6 months to remove all human presence from Council space. All treaties are void. All trade agreements are cancelled. This decision is final." Daewon stood slowly. He looked around the room. Some of the aliens would not meet his eyes. Others stared at him with open hatred. He had spent 20 years in this chamber. 20 years of careful words and patient negotiations. 20 years of trying to prove that humans belonged here. All of it was gone now. "May I speak?" he asked. "You may not," Vorthalis said. "There is nothing more to discuss. You will leave now." Daewon nodded once. He picked up his documents and walked to the door. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. As he reached the exit, he stopped and turned back. "You will regret this," he said quietly. Then he left. The trouble had started 3 months earlier. A small moon called Taeyang 5 sat on the border between human space and Kreth territory. Human miners had been working there for 5 years. They had followed all the rules. They had filed all the correct papers. The claim was legal. Then the Kreth showed up. They said the moon belonged to them. They said there was an old treaty that gave them the right to it. The treaty was 200 years old, written in a language most humans could not read. But the Kreth insisted it was valid. Foreman Hyunwoo was in charge of the mining operation. He was a big man with rough hands and a practical mind. He had worked in space for 30 years. He knew how these things went. The Kreth would make demands. Humans would file complaints. The council would take years to decide. In the meantime, the miners would keep working. But the Kreth did not wait for the council. They sent warships. 3 heavy cruisers arrived in orbit around Taeyang 5. They demanded the humans leave immediately. Hyunwoo refused. The mine was their livelihood. 50 families depended on it. He would not abandon it without a fight. Captain Jiwon commanded the human ship that was stationed near the moon. It was called the Hammerhead. It was not a warship, just a modified cargo vessel with some weapons attached. Jiwon was 32 years old and she had a reputation for being stubborn. When the Kreth cruisers moved into attack position, she put her ship between them and the mining station. The Kreth fired warning shots. Bright plasma bolts streaked past the Hammerhead. Jiwon did not move her ship. She opened a communication channel. "This is human territory," she said. "You have no authority here. Leave now or we will defend ourselves." The Kreth commander laughed. "Your ship is no match for ours," he said. "Move aside or we will destroy you." Jiwon made a decision. It was probably the wrong decision. It was definitely the decision that changed everything. She ordered her crew to return fire. The Hammerhead was outgunned, but it was fast. Jiwon used the moon's gravity to slingshot around and hit the Kreth ships from an unexpected angle. Her weapons were not powerful enough to destroy the cruisers, but they damaged one badly. The Kreth had not expected real resistance. They scattered. In the chaos, 3 Kreth officers died when their ship's life support failed. It was not Jiwon's fault, not really. The Kreth ship was poorly maintained, but that did not matter. 3 Kreth were dead. The council had its excuse. The video of the battle spread across the galactic network within hours. News stations played it over and over. Humans firing on council members. Humans killing peaceful Kreth officers. The truth did not matter. The story was already written. Ambassador Daewon tried to explain. He showed the council the records. The Kreth had fired first. The Kreth had threatened human civilians. Captain Jiwon had acted in self-defense. But the council did not want to hear it. They had been looking for a reason to remove humanity for years. Now they had one. Humans were too aggressive, they said. Too violent. Too unpredictable. They did not fit in civilized space. The vote was 41-6. Humanity was out. The news reached Earth like a hammer blow. Billions of people watched the announcement in shock. For 73 years, humanity had been part of something bigger. They had walked among the stars with other intelligent species. They had learned and traded and grown. Now they were being thrown out like criminals. Admiral Soonbach had warned them. She was the head of Earth's small navy, and she had never trusted the Council. She had told the government to prepare for this day. They had not listened. Now they had 6 months to evacuate millions of humans from colonies, stations, and outposts across Council space. The UN Emergency Assembly met on Earth. The debate was angry and desperate. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to beg for forgiveness. Most just wanted to understand how this had happened. Ambassador Daewon stood before them and told them the truth. The Council was afraid of us, he said. We were advancing too fast, learning too quickly. We made them uncomfortable. They wanted us gone, and they finally found their excuse. Now we have to decide what to do next. Admiral Soonbach stood up. She was 60 years old with gray hair and hard eyes. She had fought in the last human war before contact with aliens. She knew what survival looked like. We go to the outer rim, she said. There is space there. No one claims it. No one patrols it. The Council thinks it is worthless. Let them think that. We will build our own civilization out there, free from their rules. Free from their judgment, many people objected. The outer rim was dangerous. It was empty. There were no established trade routes, no support systems, no allies. Going there would be like starting over from nothing. Exactly, Daewon said. We will start over. But this time we will do it our way. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would leave Council space and head for the unknown. The evacuation began immediately. Ships were loaded with supplies, equipment, and people. Families packed what they could carry and said goodbye to homes they had built over decades. Captain Jiwon was arrested by Council security. They wanted to put her on trial for murder. But Admiral Soonbach sent a rescue team. They broke her out 3 days before the trial was supposed to start. The Council screamed about it, but there was nothing they could do. Jiwon joined the Exodus fleet. 6 months later, the last human ship left Council space. 12 massive colony ships led the way. 50 military vessels provided protection. Thousands of smaller ships followed behind, carrying everything humanity owned. The fleet was enormous, stretching across millions of kilometers of space. Ambassador Daewon stood on the bridge of the lead ship and watched Council space disappear behind them. Beside him, Admiral Soonbach checked their course. Ahead of them was darkness. The outer rim waited, empty and cold. Do you think we can do this? Soonbach asked quietly. Daewon smiled. It was not a happy smile. We have to, he said, because no one else will help us now. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, the Council celebrated. The dangerous humans were gone. The galaxy was safe again. They had no idea what they had just created. The planet was frozen. Wind howled across empty ice fields that stretched to the horizon. The sky was dark gray, thick with clouds that never stopped moving. This was Wolsik 1. The first world humanity would try to claim in the outer rim. It looked like a terrible choice. Foreman Hyunwoo stood outside the landing zone, his breath forming white clouds in the thin air. His suit heater worked hard to keep him alive. Around him, crews unloaded equipment from the cargo ships, prefab buildings, mining rigs, generators, food supplies, everything they would need to survive. This place is hell, one of the workers said. His name was Tae Yang, and he had been a miner on Taeyang 5 before everything went wrong. Why did we pick this frozen rock? Hyunwoo checked his scanner. Water ice under the surface, he said. Mineral deposits. And the nebulae hide us from long-range sensors. No one will find us here unless we want them to. The first weeks were brutal. Equipment failed in the cold. Power generators struggled. 2 people died when their habitat seal broke during a radiation storm. Everyone worked 18-hour days just to stay alive. But slowly the settlement grew. They called it Firebase Alpha. Dr. Mi-sun arrived on the 3rd supply ship. She was a scientist who had studied the outer rim for years. Most people thought she was obsessed. The Council had laughed at her research. But Ambassador Daewon had seen something in her work. He sent her to Wolsik 1 with a full research team. There is something under the ice, she told Hyunwoo. The scans show structures, big ones. I need mining equipment. Hyunwoo was too busy keeping people alive to worry about ancient mysteries. But Daewon had given orders. If Dr. Mi-sun wanted to dig, she could dig. He assigned her a drilling team. 3 weeks later, they broke through. The drill punched into an empty space beneath 200 meters of ice. Mi-sun suited up and went down immediately. What she found changed everything. The chamber was massive. It stretched away into darkness, supported by pillars that seemed to grow from the floor. The walls were covered in symbols that glowed faintly. In the center stood machines, still intact after thousands of years. The progenitors had been here. The progenitors were a legend, an ancient civilization that had ruled this part of the galaxy millions of years ago. They had disappeared, leaving only ruins and questions. The council had searched for progenitor sites for centuries. They had found almost nothing. And here was one, complete and functional on a world nobody wanted. Mi-sun called for help. Her team spent days just mapping the facility. They found databases full of information, energy systems that still worked, weapon designs, propulsion technology, things that were centuries ahead of anything the council had. News spread through the human fleet. Ambassador Daewon came to see it himself. He walked through the ancient halls in silence, his hand trailing along the walls. When he emerged, he was smiling. It was the first time anyone had seen him smile since the banishment. The council cast us into darkness, he said. And in that darkness we found light. But humanity's troubles were not over. Word of the settlements reached the wrong ears. In the Outer Rim, information was currency. Pirates, smugglers, and warlords paid well for news of easy targets. And a bunch of soft council refugees sounded very easy. Kangdai was the most feared pirate warlord in the Rim. He was human, which made him more dangerous. He knew how humans thought, how they fought, how they could be broken. He had left Earth 30 years ago and never looked back. Now he commanded a fleet of stolen ships and a crew of killers from a dozen species. When he heard about Wolsek 1, he saw opportunity. Fresh refugees would have supplies, equipment, maybe even valuables they had smuggled out of council space. They would be weak and scared. Perfect targets, he gathered his fleet. 23 ships, most of them old and poorly maintained but heavily armed. He did not expect a fight. This would be a quick raid. Get in, take what they wanted, kill anyone who resisted, and get out. Admiral Soonbok saw them coming 3 days out. Her sensor network was primitive but functional. She counted the ships and ran the numbers. Her own fleet had 18 combat vessels. They were outnumbered and outgunned. She called a meeting of her captains. Captain Ji-won was there, now commanding a proper warship called the Cheonsa. The other captains were young and inexperienced. Most had never seen real combat. Soonbok looked at them and knew many would not survive what was coming. We cannot win a straight fight, she told them, so we will not fight straight. This is the Outer Rim. There are no rules here. We use everything we have, she laid out her plan. It was brutal and desperate. They would seed the approach routes with debris and mines, use the radiation storms as cover, attack from multiple angles, make every ship count, and if it came to it, ram the enemy vessels. Ji-won smiled. It was a hard smile. Finally, she said, a real fight. Kangdai's fleet arrived expecting easy prey. Instead, they jumped into a nightmare. Mines detonated, tearing through their lighter ships. Human fighters swarmed out of the radiation clouds, hitting them from behind. The pirates scattered, confused. But Kangdai was not a fool. He rallied his ships and pushed forward. His flagship was a modified carrier, bristling with weapons. He targeted Firebase Alpha on the planet below. If he could destroy the settlement, the humans would have to surrender. Captain Ji-won saw what he was doing. Her ship, the Cheonsa, was damaged and outnumbered. She had lost half her weapons and her shields were failing. But she was between Kangdai and the planet. She made a choice, all power to engines, she ordered. Ram course, her crew did not hesitate. They knew what this meant. The Cheonsa accelerated straight at the pirate carrier. Kangdai saw it coming and tried to turn away, but he was too slow. The destroyer hit the carrier's side like a hammer. The impact tore through both ships. Metal screamed. Atmosphere vented into space. But Ji-won had prepared for this. Her crew wore combat suits. The moment they hit, boarding teams poured through the breach into the carrier. Fighting in zero gravity was chaos. Ji-won led her team through the corridors of the carrier, shooting anything that moved. The pirates were tough, but they were not ready for humans who had nothing to lose. Room by room, deck by deck, the humans took the ship. Kangdai tried to escape in a shuttle. Ji-won shot him herself. The pirate warlord died on the deck of his own ship, bleeding out while his crew surrendered around him. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 14 pirate ships were destroyed or captured. The rest fled into the deep rim. Admiral Soonbok's fleet had lost 5 ships and 200 people. It was expensive, but they had won. News of the battle spread fast. Refugees defeated pirates. Humans fought like demons. Kangde, who had terrorized the Rim for a decade, was dead. Suddenly, attacking human settlements did not seem like such a good idea. Ambassador Daewon used the victory well. He sent messages to other outcasts in the Rim, species that the Council had rejected or ignored. The Tal, who were traitors. The Roken, who were warriors. The Shen, who were refugees like humans. He offered them a deal. Join together. Protect each other. Build something new. One by one, they agreed. The Rim Alliance was born. Back on Wolsik 1, Dr. Misun worked day and night with her team. They were unlocking progenitor secrets. New shield technology. Better weapons. Faster engines. Every breakthrough made humanity stronger. More colony ships arrived. New settlements were established on other worlds. Agen 2 became a farming world. Biol 3 built shipyards. Nuri 7 was turned into a military fortress. The humans were no longer just surviving. They were growing. Foreman Hyunwoo watched Firebase Alpha transform from a desperate camp into a real city. Buildings rose from the ice. Streets were laid out. Children were born who would never see Earth. It was not the life he had planned, but it was life. Far away, in Council space, people started to notice. Scouts reported activity in the Rim. Trade ships brought back stories. The humans had not died. They had not failed. They were thriving. Some Council members began to worry. What had they created by casting humanity out? But it was too late for regrets. Humanity had found its place in the darkness, and they were just getting started. 10 years passed like a storm. What had been ice and emptiness was now civilization. New Pyongyang Station hung in orbit above Wolsik 1, a massive construct of metal and light. Ships came and went constantly, carrying goods, people, and news from dozens of worlds. The Outer Rim had become home. Ambassador Daewon was older now. His hair was gray and lines marked his face, but his eyes were still sharp. He sat in his office at the center of the station, watching the ships move through space outside his window. He was no longer just an ambassador. He was First Minister of the Rim Alliance, leader of 7 species and 23 settled worlds. A message came through on his screen. It was from Merchant Captain Jae-hee. She ran one of the largest trading operations in the Alliance. Her ships moved goods faster and cheaper than anyone else. She had news. The Veltarn shipyards are closing, her message said. 3 more this month. They cannot compete with our prices. Council traders are buying from us now, even though it is illegal. Their economy is hurting, Daewon smiled. He had planned this. For 10 years, Alliance merchants had undercut Council prices. Rare minerals from Rim asteroids flooded the black market. Alliance-built ships were cheaper and better than Council versions. Every credit spent on Alliance goods was a credit not spent in Council space. It was economic warfare, quiet and effective. The Council did not even realize they were losing until it was too late. But not everyone was happy with slow victories. General Sangwoo commanded the Alliance military. He was younger than Admiral Soonbok, aggressive and impatient. He believed the Alliance should strike the Council directly. Why wait for them to collapse when we could crush them now, he argued. Daewon called a meeting of the Alliance Council. Representatives from all member species gathered in the Great Hall. Humans, Tal, Roken, Shen, and others. They debated for hours. General Sangwoo stood before them, his uniform crisp and his voice loud. We have the weapons, he said. We have progenitor technology. Our ships are better than theirs. One strike at their core worlds and they will surrender. We can end this quickly. The Council is 47 species, Daewon replied calmly. Even if we win battles, the war would drag on for years. Millions would die. Our people came here to escape war, not to start a new one. Then what do you propose? Sangwoo demanded. We wait until they attack us? Dr. Misun stood up. She was thinner now, her eyes red from long hours in the laboratory, but her voice was steady. I have another option, she said. A demonstration of power without war. She brought up a hologram. It showed a massive structure floating in deep space. This is a progenitor defense station, she explained. We found it 3 years ago in the outer reaches. It has been dormant for millions of years. But I believe we can restore it. What does it do? Daewon asked. Misun smiled. It creates a defensive field that can cover an entire sector. Ships cannot pass through it. Weapons cannot penetrate it. If we activate this station, the outer rim becomes impossible to invade. The council debated. Finally, they voted. The station project was approved. They called it Fortress Eternity. Foreman Hyunwoo led the construction effort. He was older now, his back bent from decades of hard work, but he still knew how to get things done. Thousands of workers joined him. They worked in the cold of space, restoring ancient systems and adding modern improvements. It took 2 years. Meanwhile, the council finally noticed what was happening. 3 of their member species formally requested to join the Rim Alliance. The Mora, the Quilrin, and the Hesk all sent delegations. They were tired of council bureaucracy and high taxes. They wanted the freedom and opportunity the Rim offered. Chancellor Vorthalis was still in charge. He was furious. The humans were supposed to disappear. Instead, they were stealing council members. He called an emergency session and demanded action. He sent Inquisitor Velcor to investigate. Velcor was Kreth, cold and methodical. He had investigated hundreds of treaty violations. He expected to find evidence of illegal weapons, treaty breaches, or something that would justify military action. Admiral Soonbach met him at the border. She was 70 now, but still sharp. She welcomed Velcor with perfect politeness and offered to show him around. Of course, she only showed him what she wanted him to see. Velcor toured Alliance facilities. He saw shipyards, farms, research stations. Everything looked legitimate. But he was not fooled. He could see the military readiness, the advanced technology, the discipline. These were not desperate refugees anymore. These were an organized power. He returned to council space with his report. The humans are strong, he told the council. Stronger than we expected. They have weapons we do not understand. They have allies. They have resources. If we attack them, it will be costly. Chancellor Vorthalis dismissed the warning. They are still just humans, he said. We expelled them once. We can do it again if needed. The council does not fear exiles and outcasts, but many council members were not so sure. The Mora ambassador spoke up. Perhaps we should negotiate, she suggested. The Alliance is not our enemy. They have not attacked us. They simply want to live in peace. Vorthalis would not hear it. The humans are a threat to order, he insisted. They must be brought under control. Back in the Rim, Fortress Eternity came online. Dr. Misun stood in the control center as the ancient systems powered up. Energy flowed through channels that had been dead for ages. The station began to hum with power. Activate the field, she ordered. The defense field spread out like a wave. It was invisible but detectable on sensors. It covered the core Alliance systems, creating a barrier that would stop any invasion fleet. The Rim was now protected. News of the activation reached the Council within days. Their military analysts studied the readings. They realized what it meant. The humans had made themselves untouchable. Chancellor Vorthalis called another emergency session. He pushed for military action before the Alliance became even stronger. The debate was fierce. Hawks wanted war. Doves wanted negotiation. In the end, the Hawks won by a narrow margin. The Council authorized the formation of a Grand Armada. Ships from 24 species were called up. Over 600 warships would march on the Outer Rim. It would be the largest military operation in Council history. Command was given to Fleet Admiral Krelath. He was Kreth like Velcor, but a military genius. He had never lost a battle. He studied the intelligence reports on the Alliance and developed a strategy. Overwhelming force, precise strikes, minimal casualties. The humans would be given one chance to surrender. If they refused, their colonies would be destroyed. First Minister Daewon received the ultimatum on a secure channel. He read it twice, then called his advisors. Admiral Soonbach, Commodore Jiwan, General Sangwoo, Dr. Misun, and representatives from all Alliance species gathered around the table. They want us to surrender, Daewon said quietly. Disband the Alliance, accept Council governance, return to their control. What do we do? Asked the Tal representative. His species had fled Council persecution to join the Alliance. They cannot go back. We fight, General Sangwoo said immediately. Can we win? Daewon asked Admiral Soonbach. The old admiral was quiet for a moment. We are outnumbered 10-1, she said, but we have advantages. Better technology, better training, and we are fighting for our homes. They are fighting because politicians told them to. Commodore Jiwan leaned forward. Her ship was ready. Her crew was ready. We beat them before, she said. We can beat them again. Day One looked around the table. Every face showed the same determination. These people had been cast out, hunted, and dismissed. But they had survived. They had built something worth protecting. They would not surrender it now. He stood up. Send our response to the council, he said. Tell them the Rim Alliance does not bow. Tell them we will defend our freedom, and tell them they are making a terrible mistake. The message was sent. The council received it and dismissed it as bravado. Fleet Admiral Kralath ordered his armada to advance. 600 ships began the long journey to the Outer Rim. In the Alliance, every available ship was recalled. Every soldier was mobilized. Every world prepared for war. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But they had been outnumbered before. They had been written off as weak and doomed. And they had proved everyone wrong. The largest battle the galaxy had seen in centuries was about to begin, and the humans were ready. The armada arrived at the edge of the shattered void. Fleet Admiral Kralath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the scanner displays. The void was a dangerous region, full of unstable wormholes and radiation storms. It was the gateway to the Outer Rim. 600 ships moved in formation behind him. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, and support vessels from 24 species. It was the largest military force the Council had assembled in 2 centuries. Kralath felt confident. The Alliance had maybe 60 combat ships. This would be over quickly. All ships prepare for entry, he ordered. Maintain formation. Stay alert for hostiles. The armada entered the void. Immediately, sensors started acting strange. The radiation was worse than expected. Wormholes appeared and disappeared on the scanners. Ships had to adjust course constantly to avoid collisions. The neat formation began to break apart. Kralath frowned. This was not ideal, but it was manageable. They would regroup on the other side. He checked the tactical display. No sign of Alliance forces yet. Perhaps they were hiding behind their defense station, hoping it would save them. Then the first mine exploded. A Veltharn cruiser on the left flank simply disappeared in a ball of fire. Then another explosion, and another. The Alliance had seeded the entire approach route with gravity mines. The sensors could not detect them through all the radiation. All ships, evasive action, Kralath shouted. But it was too late. The formation was already broken. Ships scattered in every direction, trying to avoid the mines. Some ran straight into wormholes. Others collided with each other in the chaos. Then the Alliance fighters appeared. They came out of the radiation clouds like ghosts. Small, fast ships that the scanners barely registered. The pilots flew like madmen, weaving through debris and wormholes with impossible skill. They hit the scattered council ships from behind, targeting engines and weapons. Commodore Jiwan led the attack. She flew a modified fighter called a Wasp, painted black with red markings. Her squadron followed her through the chaos, striking and disappearing before the council ships could respond. It was not about destroying the enemy. It was about creating confusion and fear. Fleet Admiral Kralath realized what was happening. This was a trap. The Alliance was not defending their colonies. They were using the void itself as a weapon. He needed to rally his forces before they were picked apart completely. All ships fall back to Rally Point 7, he ordered. Form defensive perimeter. Ignore the fighters. Focus on regrouping. It took hours. Council ships limped back to the rally point, many damaged. Kralath counted his losses. 40 ships destroyed or missing. Another 60 damaged. And they had not even engaged the main Alliance fleet yet. But Kralath was a skilled commander. He adapted. He reorganized his forces into tighter groups. He sent scout ships ahead to clear mines. He positioned his carriers to provide fighter cover. By the end of the second day, he had most of his armada ready to advance. The real battle began on the third day. Admiral Sunbach waited with the main Alliance fleet. She had positioned her ships in 3 groups, using asteroid fields and radiation zones for cover. Her flagship, the Righteous Fury, was an old battleship upgraded with progenitor weapons. Around her were 50 other warships, everything the Alliance could spare. The Council armada came forward in a massive wave. Even reduced, they still outnumbered the Alliance 9-1. Kralath's strategy was simple: overwhelm them with firepower. There was no clever tactic that could overcome such odds. But Sunbach had spent 10 years preparing for this moment. She knew she could not win a straight fight, so she would not fight straight. All ships execute Pattern Delta, she ordered calmly. The Alliance ships split up and attacked from multiple angles. They used hit-and-run tactics, striking and retreating before the Council ships could bring their full firepower to bear. Progenitor plasma weapons cut through Council shields like paper. Alliance ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their crews had been training for exactly this scenario. But numbers still mattered. The Council ships pressed forward relentlessly. Alliance vessels took heavy damage. The destroyer Nuri's Pride exploded, taking 80 crew with it. The cruiser Morningstar lost all power and drifted helplessly. One by one, Alliance ships were being destroyed. Commodore G1 returned with her fighter squadrons. They swarmed the Council carriers, destroying launch bays and preventing them from deploying more fighters. But even she could see they were losing. There were just too many enemy ships. The battle raged for 6 days. Space became a graveyard. Wrecked ships drifted everywhere. Bodies floated in the vacuum. Both sides were exhausted. The Council had lost over 200 ships. The Alliance had lost 30, but 30 was more than half their fleet. On the 7th day, Fleet Admiral Kraloth prepared his final assault. He had enough ships left to crush the remaining Alliance forces. He would accept their surrender or destroy them completely. Either way, the war would end today. Then Fortress Eternity activated its weapons. The ancient progenitor station had been dormant during the battle, its defensive field protecting Alliance territory. But it had other systems. Weapon systems that Dr. Misun had been studying for years. Systems she had finally learned to control. A pulse of energy swept through the battle zone. It was not destructive. It was something else. Every Council ship within range suddenly went dark. Reactors shut down. Weapons stopped firing. Life support failed. Shields collapsed. The ships were not destroyed. They were simply turned off. 400 Council ships became floating coffins. Fleet Admiral Kraloth sat in his command chair in the dark. Emergency lights flickered on. His crew was shouting, trying to restart the systems. But nothing worked. The progenitor weapon had disabled everything. He looked out the viewport. Alliance ships were moving among the disabled Council vessels. For a moment he thought they would fire, finishing off the helpless ships. It would be the smart military decision. But they did not fire. Instead, they began rescue operations. Commodore G1 led the effort. Alliance ships docked with disabled Council vessels. They brought power cells, life support equipment, and medical supplies. They pulled injured crew members from damaged sections. They saved thousands of lives. Kraloth watched in disbelief. These humans could have destroyed his entire fleet. They could have slaughtered everyone. Instead, they were saving them. An Alliance shuttle docked with his flagship. The airlock opened. First Minister Daewon walked through, accompanied by 2 guards. He was old and tired, but his eyes were steady. Fleet Admiral Kraloth, Daewon said quietly. We need to talk. They sat in Kraloth's ready room. Emergency power provided dim light. Daewon poured 2 cups of water from his own supply. He offered one to Kraloth. You could have killed us all, Kraloth said. Why did you not? Because we are not monsters, Daewon replied. We never wanted this war. We just wanted to be left alone. You came here to destroy us because your leaders were afraid of us. But we do not need to be enemies. Kraloth was quiet for a long time. I have fought for the Council for 40 years, he said finally. I believed we were protecting civilization, maintaining order. But you are right. We came here out of fear, not justice. Daewon slid a datapad across the table. These are our terms for a ceasefire, he said. Read them, think about them. We are restoring power to your ships now. You are free to leave. Take our terms back to the Council. Tell them we want peace, not war. What if they refuse? Kraloth asked. Daewon stood up. Then we will defend ourselves again. And next time we might not be so merciful. Fleet Admiral Kraloth returned to Council space 3 weeks later. His fleet was battered and broken. Thousands were dead, but thousands more had been saved by the enemy they had come to destroy. He delivered Daewon's terms to the Council. The debate was fierce. Some wanted to send another fleet. Others argued for negotiation. Chancellor Vorthalis tried to maintain support for continued war, but he had lost credibility. The disaster was his fault. After months of argument, Vorthalis was forced to resign. His replacement was a Mora diplomat named Sora Vin. She was practical and wise. She read the alliance terms carefully. Then she sent a message to the Outer Rim. First Minister Daewon, her message said. The Council invites the Rim Alliance to formal negotiations. Come to our chambers. not as exiles, but as equals. Daewon read the message 3 times. Then he smiled. It had taken 20 years. A banishment, a war, thousands of deaths. But finally the council understood. Humanity could not be ignored anymore. 20 years had passed since the banishment. Ambassador Daewon was an old man now. His hair was completely white and he walked with a cane. But his mind was still sharp as he stood before the council chambers once again. This time he did not stand alone. Representatives from the Rim Alliance flanked him on both sides. Humans, Tal, Roken Shen, and half a dozen other species. They wore the insignia of the Alliance proudly. The council members watched them enter in silence. Some faces showed respect. Others showed shame. Chancellor Sorovin stood at the podium. She was Mora, with blue-gray skin and large, intelligent eyes. She had replaced Forthalis after the war disaster. She spoke clearly and without pride. 20 years ago, this council made a grave mistake, she said. We expelled humanity out of fear and arrogance. We believed we were protecting civilization. Instead, we nearly destroyed it. Today, we acknowledge that mistake. Today, we offer not just apology, but partnership. Daewon stepped forward. He had prepared a long speech, but looking at the council members, he decided to keep it simple. 20 years ago, you cast us out, he said. You believed we were dangerous and uncivilized. Perhaps you were right. We are dangerous, but not in the way you thought. We are dangerous because we refuse to give up. We are dangerous because we adapt and survive. We are dangerous because we help each other, even when everyone else abandons us. He paused and looked around the chamber. You sent an armada to destroy us. We defeated it. But we did not destroy you. We saved your people. We treated your wounded. We sent your soldiers home. That is who we are. That is what you failed to see 20 years ago. The Treaty of the Two Spheres was signed that day. The galaxy was officially divided. The Council would maintain sovereignty over the core systems. The Rim Alliance would govern the Outer Rim and all unclaimed territories. Free trade and movement would be guaranteed between both regions. Military conflicts would be subject to arbitration. It was not perfect peace. There would still be disputes and tensions. But it was better than war. Both sides understood that now. Daewon returned to New Pyongyang Station. He was tired. The journey to Council space had been difficult for a man his age. He stood on the observation deck looking out at the station that had become the heart of the Alliance. Ships moved in constant streams. Cargo vessels from dozens of worlds, passenger liners carrying families and workers, military patrols keeping the peace. The Outer Rim was alive with activity. What had been empty darkness was now home to billions. A young officer approached. Her name was Hana. She had been born on Wolsik 1 20 years ago, just after the first settlement was established. She had never seen Earth. For her generation, the Rim was not exile. It was home, First Minister, she said. Dr. Misun needs to see you. She says it is urgent. Daewon made his way to the research center. Dr. Misun looked even older than him. She had spent 20 years studying progenitor technology, barely sleeping, always working, but her eyes were bright with excitement. We found something, she said. Something incredible. She brought up a hologram. It showed a massive structure floating in the deepest part of the rim. It looked like a ring, but it was enormous, big enough to fly ships through. A progenitor gateway, Misun explained. It is dormant, but functional. We have been studying the activation sequences. I believe we can turn it on. What does it do? Daewon asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. It is a portal, Misun said, a doorway to another galaxy. The progenitors used it to travel between galaxies millions of years ago. If we activate it, we could explore entirely new regions of space, billions of stars, countless worlds, all waiting to be discovered. Daewon sat down slowly. After everything they had been through, after all the struggles and wars and sacrifices, here was another frontier. Another challenge. Another unknown. The Alliance Council debated for weeks. Some argued it was too dangerous. They knew nothing about what lay beyond the gateway. There could be hostile civilizations, unknown diseases, threats they could not imagine. Others argued that exploration was in humanity's nature. They had not come this far to stop now. General Sang-woo had been arrested years ago for trying to start a war with the Council without authorization. He had been exiled to a remote mining colony, but some still listened to his recorded speeches. Be careful, he had warned. Do not reach too far. Protect what we have built. But Daewon was too old to lead anymore. He announced his retirement. The Alliance needed younger leadership, people who had grown up in the Rim and understood its spirit. A new First Minister was elected. Her name was Bora, and she was 35 years old. She had been born on a colony ship during the Exodus. Bora was bold and optimistic. She reminded people of how Captain Jiwan had been in her youth. She called a special session of the Alliance Council and presented her vision. 20 years ago, our ancestors were cast out, she said. They could have given up. They could have begged for mercy. Instead, they built something amazing. They turned exile into opportunity. Now we stand at another crossroads. Do we stay here, comfortable and safe? Or do we continue the journey? The vote was close, but it passed. The Gateway project was approved. A new expedition would be assembled. Ships, crew, scientists, and soldiers. They would be the first to venture into a completely unknown galaxy. Commodore G1 was retired now. She spent her days teaching at the military academy, training the next generation of pilots and officers. When she heard about the Gateway expedition, she laughed. Her daughter, Jiwan, had named her Minji, was a ship captain. Minji immediately volunteered to lead the expedition. You are just like your mother, Jiwan told her. Stubborn and reckless, Minji grinned. You say that like it is a bad thing. The expedition fleet assembled near the Gateway. 15 ships carrying 5,000 people. Scientists, explorers, families willing to risk everything for a new start. It was smaller than the original Exodus, but it carried the same spirit. Dr. Misun personally oversaw the Gateway activation. She was 80 years old now, and this would be her final project. Her hands shook as she entered the activation sequence. The ancient progenitor systems came to life. Energy flowed through the ring. Space itself began to ripple and tear. The Gateway opened. Through it, they could see stars. Different stars. A whole new galaxy waiting to be explored. Ambassador Daewon came to watch the departure. He was 90 years old, confined to a wheelchair, but he refused to miss this moment. First Minister Bora stood beside him. Around them, thousands of people gathered to watch on screens and viewports. Captain Minji's voice came over the speakers. This is Expedition Fleet 1. We are ready for transit. Thank you for everything you have built. We will make you proud. The ships moved forward one by one and disappeared through the Gateway. The crowd watched in silence. Some people cried. Others cheered. All of them felt the same mixture of fear and hope. Daewon watched the last ship vanish. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. From the council chambers where they were cast out, to the frozen hell of Wolsik 1, through war and hardship and impossible odds, and now sending ships to explore a whole new galaxy. The council banished us because they thought we were dangerous, he said quietly to Bora. They were afraid of what we might become. Bora smiled. Were they wrong? Daewon thought about it. Then he laughed. It was a dry, wheezing laugh, but genuine. No, he said. They were not wrong. We are dangerous. We refuse to accept limits. We refuse to give up. We refuse to stay in our place. That is what makes us human. Down on Wolsik 1, the city that had grown from Firebase Alpha spread across the landscape. Foreman Hyunwoo had died 5 years ago, but his statue stood in the central square. The first colony had become a world of 10 million people. Children played in parks that had been built on frozen wasteland. Universities taught students from a dozen species. Ships came and went constantly. The Outer Rim was no longer a place of exile. It was a place of opportunity, freedom, and hope. Species that the Council had rejected found welcome here. Ideas that the Council had suppressed flourished here. The Rim had become everything the core systems once were and more. In Council space, things had changed too. Chancellor Soraven had pushed through reforms. The old hierarchies were broken down. Smaller species got more representation. Trade opened up. The Council was not what it had been, and that was probably for the better. Some Council members still resented humanity. They saw the Rim Alliance as a threat, a rival that had stolen their power and prestige, but most understood the truth. The galaxy was big enough for both. Competition made everyone stronger, and humanity had proven they could be trusted, even when they had every reason for revenge. Ambassador Daewon died peacefully in his sleep, 3 months after the expedition departed. His funeral was attended by thousands. Council representatives came to pay respects. Even Fleet Admiral Kraloth, now retired, made the journey to honor the man who had defeated him and then saved his life. They buried him on Wolsik 1, in the place where humanity had first claimed the Outer Rim. His gravestone was simple. It said only, "He never gave up." Years later, a message came back through the gateway. Captain Minji reported that the expedition had found habitable worlds. They had made first contact with 3 new species. They were establishing colonies. First Minister Borari,